Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the WomenConnect Challenge webinar. My name is Andrea Falso, and we want to thank you all for joining us this morning. I'll be facilitating the webinar today, and my co-presenter is Revi Sterling, who will introduce herself in a moment. Sure, so to start off, we're going to have a little interactive poll that you can take a look at while we're explaining our agenda this morning. So you might recognize this. This is one of the questions that we ask in our online application, but we'd like you all to let us know how you heard about the WomenConnect Challenge. And we have a couple different options here for you to choose from. This is just, we won't use the information for anything. We just want to kind of get an idea of where people found us. So, great. So you can also, as we're going along, you can also ask questions along the way with the Q&A function, which we will review along the way, and we will answer some of them at the end. We'll answer some if we have time and if we have not answered them along the way already. And just to give you an idea of our agenda this morning, I'm going to introduce Revi, and she'll speak for a few moments. Then we will, she and I will go over a list of our most frequently asked questions and give you the answers to those questions. And then we'll have time for live questions and answers. Great. So, okay, so I'll hand it over to Revi Sterling, who is the director of the WomenConnect Challenge, and she can introduce herself.
Great. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It's great to see this many participants coming together to look at the issues that are so near and dear to all of our hearts, which is that murky, unsolved problem of why technology is not lifting women and girls out of poverty and helping them achieve their own development goals, as well as the promise of technology has made it out to be. So my name is Revi, as Andrea said. I've been working in this area for about 20 plus years, and have always been technologist. You know, I love technology. As a feminist, I am so involved in women's and girls' empowerment, and it's really been heartbreaking over the years to see gender divides continue to grow through digital initiatives. And in fact, I've worked on several that have been designed specifically to help women and girls empower themselves, and we end up, creating and introducing even additional divides into communities, into families. That leads to backlash, that leads to a lack of trust in technology, and it delegitimizes digital development as a form of development in itself and as an enabler of other development sectors. So when this chance to direct the WomenConnect Challenge came around from USAID and DAI, I had to jump on it and come over and work on this, because for me, and hopefully for you, this is a new opportunity to couch doing gendered work on a digital divide in a different way. So long we've been looking at specifically, one-off digital literacy programs or programs that only benefit a certain group or a certain development sector. We know the barriers on why women and girls have less access to ICT, access and use to ICT. We've known them for decades. It's the typical ones. It's cost, it's access, it's literacy, it's digital literacy, it's skills, it's safety. But, even though we try to address those in, kind of a vacuum, and have tried so hard, thousands of efforts around the world, we fail to look at the underlying issues, which are a lot of the social norms and the culture and socioeconomic barriers that keep women and girls from accessing and using ICT. And those are kind of those deep, further issues, a step down that make, I would say, technologists a little uncomfortable, because, oh, that's culture. Are we supposed to change culture? What do we do with this? This is messy. This is hard to work with. And that is what it is. Development is messy, and development is psychological, and development is about changing the status quo, and so is technology. So to that degree, we're really looking for proposals through this challenge that dig in far more into what are the conditions under which women and girls could access technology more. And that may be a technological solution, that may not be a technological solution, but it does enable technological access and use. So I think with this challenge, I will turn it over to the questions because that's why we're all here. This is such an opportunity to really dig deeper than a lot of the previous funding and practice opportunities have been in the past.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to dive into some of our questions that we received. But before we do that, I think we'll put up our second poll to ask why you're excited about our competition. As Remy just explained, we're really excited about the competition, and we're very excited to see your ideas and your proposals. So we want to know what you've been excited about and what you're interested in learning or what you're interested in doing as part of this competition. So you can take a look at the responses here and pick the ones that are that apply to your situation. Great. Okay. Great. So let's also then dive into some of our frequently asked questions. We received a lot of questions. Thank you all so much for your response. It's great to hear from so many different people. And we received a lot of people asking about similar things. So that was great, and that helped us to kind of realize a couple of things that we definitely need to provide more information on, which is the point of this webinar. And I just wanted to remind you all as well that this webinar will be recorded and posted on our application website. We will also provide a written response to all of the questions that we're answering today, as well as all of the ones that we won't be able to answer today during this session. All of those will be posted in document and downloadable on our website as well. Great. Okay, so the first question that we received, and probably the most frequently asked question, was about our budget limits. What is the overall funding available for grants, and what is the minimum or maximum that you can apply for? So the overall funding that we have available during this phase of the WomenConnect Challenge is approximately $1 million for grants. We anticipate that we will divide this $1 million across approximately 10 different grantees. So with those estimates in mind, that means that each grant will probably be between $80,000 and $120,000. That is our expectation, but this is an estimate. And despite this, there's no minimum or maximum amount that you can apply for. You can apply for the amount that you find appropriate for your activity or your solution. And the budget amount will not be taken into account for in your scoring or in the evaluation of your application. It will be something that is evaluated separately. And we're anticipating that each project will need a unique budget total, and we'll consider all of our applications. If you are requested, in stage one, you're requested to submit an illustrative budget. That is a very high-level budget. There's a template in our application online. If you're selected as a semi-finalist, then we will ask you to detail out this budget into at a much more granular level, and we'll also ask for more information in a budget narrative. And as we said, we anticipate that each person will have a different amount, and we'll work with you at that time to put together your budget ceiling. Great. Okay. Moving on, the next one that was very frequently asked as well is, what is the period of performance for these grants, and what is the time frame that we're anticipating? So we anticipate that the maximum period of performance will be 18 months from the date of award. Similar to the budget, though, despite this expectation, we anticipate that every project or solution will have a different time frame, and you can set your own estimated time frame in your proposal. Prior to the grants being awarded, each of the grantees will work with the WomenConnect team to determine the specific time frame and period of performance for your individual project. We expected that the grants will be awarded around October or November of 2018. And as we said, there's no standard time frame, but we expect that the maximum for your period of performance will be 18 months from the date of award this fall. Okay, next question. How many semifinalists will there be, and how many finalists? We don't have a definite number. Again, this is estimates, but we expect that there will be approximately 20 semifinalists and approximately 10 finalists. The finalists are those that will receive the grant awards. Again, these numbers are estimates. And as explained in our RFA, The approximately 20 semifinalists will be those that are invited to the semifinalist event that we anticipate will be mid to late June of 2018. And of those 20 semifinalists, then we will select approximately 10 to receive grant awards. Okay, moving on. What is the arrangement between DEI, Digital Frontiers, WomenConnect? Who are all these partners that are involved? Who are all these names that you've been seeing in our different documents? DEI, for those of you who don't know, is a large international development company. We're the implementing partner for USAID's Digital Frontiers project. The Digital Frontiers project works exclusively with USAID's Center for Digital Development. And the mandate of the Digital Frontiers project is to foster a more inclusive and robust global digital ecosystem by identifying the most successful digital solutions and scale up their impact. Digital Frontiers will issue and manage the WomenConnect grants on behalf of USAID. So winning applicants or winning grantees will sign grant awards with DEI, but USAID will be involved somewhat in the implementation of these grants as well. USAID must approve all grants before we are able to issue them, and they may have some oversight and technical direction. But the Digital Frontiers, through DEI, will be the primary party responsible for technical implementation, technical oversight of the implementation, as well as any technical direction that's required during the course of the grant implementation.
Okay, great. So we'll move into my series of questions. So there have been several questions about the difference between phase 1 and phase 2 of the WomenConnect Challenge. What does the scaling solution mean and when will it happen? And will grantees from phase 1 be able to apply for funding in phase 2? Well, note that this RFA right now is only looking at WomenConnect proposals for phase 1. And what we're really looking for with that is evidence base around, growing the evidence base around, smaller, more local defined problems, what I would call maybe pilot approaches through technical assistance and monetary support. And then phase 2 would be where we scale the proven solutions. That would be around, we haven't even planned phase 2 yet. Our plans for phase 2 are to start planning phase 2, but we can't really provide any of the full details yet, but we are absolutely going to encourage grantees from phase 1 to apply to phase 2. So phase 1, let's just think of that as a very interesting, effective levers to remove barriers to women's and girls' ICT use and access, and phase 2 will be around scaling the locally proven solutions. Next question. We received many questions asking if your solution scope of work or focus was acceptable or encouraged. We cannot provide you individual validation or guidance. However, the following is general guidance regarding the type of solutions and scope of work that WomenConnect hopes to see. So how we're defining solution is a particular approach that would be agnostic around whether it's a technology, an application, a process, or something entirely different. But simply that it would be evaluated on its understanding of the problem and local context, the comprehensiveness of the approach, and its potential for real, tangible, and sustainable development impact around particular barriers affecting women's and girls' use of ICT. Projects do not necessarily have to be digitally driven. For example, WomenConnect could select a behavioral change solution that encourages women's access to technology as long as the application demonstrates these considerations. Similarly, a proposal could include solutions that use digital technology to enable access to information or knowledge that is currently lacking for the target audience you work with. Regarding whether a solution should focus on technology itself or user adoption and increase in access, we are agnostic as to the pathway to addressing the digital divide. The important factor is that the barrier itself is addressed, and as a result, there's an outline as to how resolution of that barrier will result in the particular development outcome we're looking for, and that you're looking for. Solutions may focus on both a humanitarian and or development context. The project may include a research component, although please note that per the RFA, we're not looking for proposals that have a strict research focus. Your project may be part of a longer-term initiative or a benefit to the public in general, as long as the evidence clearly outlines how this solution affects the particular barriers women and girls face. Solutions should increase uptake of digital technologies, including internet and mobile by women and girls, but traditional solutions such as radio or other media can absolutely be part of this solution. Similarly, we received many questions asking if your solution's digital tool, scope of work, or focus was acceptable or encouraged. Just so you know, we cannot provide individual validation or guidance. However, we have presented the following as a general guidance regarding digital tools and the type of digital solutions WomenConnect hopes to see. So in light of that, USAID defines digital tools as the internet, mobile phones, cards, digital infrastructure, and all other tools used to collect, store, analyze, and share information digitally. There are no particular ICT skill sets or use of specific technologies that we are looking for. We hope to see solutions that use digital tools and access to help address help address development challenges and improve women's lives, and to be able to see that link clearly outlined in the application. WomenConnect does not have a priority or preference for increasing women's knowledge of digital technology over women's use of digital technology for business growth or information sharing. Proposals that include the development of new digital technologies will be considered, but not prioritized over those proposing facilitating access to existing technologies. Proposals may include purchase and distribution of mobile devices to the extent that it is a necessary component of your solution to address a particular access barrier or development challenge. So solutions may have both a digital and analog component. It's back to you.
Great. So I see there's a related question that we just received that I think it really relates to the questions that you just answered, Ravi, where we're getting a question, does the solution need to focus on a barrier to women's use of technology itself, or could it look at reducing barriers to women's benefit from technology?
Now, I would say that both of those are very important. Thank you for that question that really goes into some of the nuances of this very complex problem. I would say the primary focus is on looking at the barriers to women's access and use of technology. But if there is a component that looks at reducing barriers to women's benefits, that is also a very intriguing proposition.
Great. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, great. So we'll move on to the next question that we were going to discuss about partnerships. We received a lot of questions about partnerships, so we'd like to provide you a little bit more information. So people asked us to explain more about the requirements for partnerships. For example, can I apply if I don't have a partner? And what does it mean when we say that we want demonstrated organizational partnerships? So this is an important part of your application, and it may impact your eligibility to apply for the WomenConnect Challenge. So individuals alone are not eligible to apply without an organization as your partner. This is due to regulations from the U.S. government. We are not able to disperse grant funds to an individual person. Additionally, organizations or individuals that do not have a local presence in the country where you want to implement your solution need to demonstrate local partnerships. So your local partners in this instance could be either an organization or an individual. And when we say that you must have a local presence, that means that you or your organization must be implementing projects or activities in a particular country. It's important to note that in both of these cases, in order to receive grant funds, one of the applicants must be a legally registered entity, for instance, a nonprofit, a non-governmental organization, a for-profit business, a community-based organization, etc. In all instances, the grant signatory must be a legally registered entity. So if you are an individual and you want to apply for this, you must not only partner with an organization, but that organization must be the grant signatory. The grant signatory, in all cases, will be the entity that must meet all of the eligibility requirements in the RFA. So for instance, we've laid out the requirements to have a DUNS number, to be registered in the SAM database, to demonstrate your financial and administrative capabilities, all of those things will apply to the grant signatory. If you are applying with a partner, you will be asked to upload a letter of commitment, and there's a space in our online application to upload a letter of commitment or a memorandum of understanding explaining this. And the letter of commitment must explain the nature of your partnership and the agreement to work together. So I see that we also received a question regarding partnerships from Paula Brown. I have a question regarding partnerships. We belong to a business cooperative in Botswana. Within this cooperative, we have access to each member's services. Can we list some of these businesses as partners? Yes, absolutely. That's totally fine, and that's the kind of thing that we would encourage, and we'd like you to bring in people from your network. So in your situation, you would just need to determine or name one of those organizations as kind of the lead grantee, or as the official organization that will be that would be the grant signatory and that would need to meet all of the eligibility requirements. So that's totally fine. And in the application where we ask you to list your partners, then you can list out the ones that you're going to work with. Okay, the next question is also similar. So we mentioned in the RFA that the applicants are strongly encouraged to work with a partner. So many people ask what sorts of partners would be ideal, and what do we recommend as the recommended nature for the partnership. So this goes beyond the eligibility requirements that we just mentioned previously, talking about how you need to have a local presence and you cannot be an individual. So beyond those eligibility requirements, we would encourage any partnerships to the extent that they deepen the comprehensiveness of your approach, that they further the understanding of the problem or context, or increase the solution's potential for real, tangible, and sustained development impact. We as WomenConnect cannot determine for you what type of or number of partners to seek or engage in your solution. So we do not have suggestions for you of people to partner with, and that's not something that not a service that we can provide, but we do encourage you to do that on your own. Okay, handing it back to Revi. Thank you.
Great. We have several questions that go back to sort of the content and context of the proposals themselves. So let me take a few questions here. This is one we received a few of. What do you mean when you say you will not fund solutions in the idea phase with no demonstration of application? Another similar question, what do you mean when you say you will not fund existing projects without a new component? Well, let me take that on. In order for a solution to be competitive, we expect that the solution is already more than just an idea. Specifically, we would like to fund promising solutions that already have some proof of concept, but need to be rigorously tested. This is because we need to measure the social impact and cost effectiveness and/or establish the market viability of the solution, and to also build paths towards sustainability and scale. Applicants do not have to present effectiveness data, but you do need to demonstrate the application. In the application, you need to demonstrate the application of the idea in the proposed solution. In this context, new means using an existing solution in a new geography or a new sector, using a new solution in an existing sector or geography, using a new solution in a new context or space, or recombining existing solutions to address new contexts. So no, we're not asking organizations to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but we are asking you to be very thoughtful about your proposals in terms of knowing that we're not just looking for novelty factor, and we're not just looking to stand up things that are just in someone's brain at this point. We're actually looking for very applicable, practical, and thoughtful solutions. Let's see. We have a question about scaling. We have two questions about scaling. Do you have a preference for how solutions are scaled, and who should be involved in the execution of scaling? So I'm going to read this from the phase 1, stage 1 part of the request for applications, which is on page 13. The potential for large-scale development impact. Proposals will be measured according to the degree to which the proposed solution is able to impact a development problem affecting women and girls. The proposed solution must also demonstrate the potential to reach additional women and girls through replication or adaptation in new geographies, sectors, or contexts. So what this means is that we hope to see the degree to which the proposed solution may be able to impact a development program affecting women and girls, whether by affecting a large number of beneficiaries in the same geography or context, or in different geographies or contexts. We don't have a preference. Regarding the details of the scaling solutions themselves, that is the focus of phase 2. So just to break that down one more time, scale is not the focus necessarily of phase 1. It is important to address what the limitations and opportunities are for scale, but proposals that are looking very much specifically at scaling right now should wait till phase 2. Let's see, we have another question here, and this one was actually confusing to me too, so don't worry. One of the questions is it mandatory for the proposed solutions to be built at the convergence of health, education, and livelihoods, or can it cater to each of these sectors individually or in combinations? Are applicants expected to work in all 3 outcomes? What we meant in the RFA when we said health, education, and livelihoods were just examples of the types of sectors that we know that most NGOs and CBOs are working in at the very, very highest level. So these were literally meant to be examples of the kinds of areas where we assume we will see many proposals and where many of you are working. But the proposed solutions can pertain to any development sector or to women's access overall. It is not sector specific, and these were only listed as illustrative examples. Okay, and here's another clarification one. The RFA references digital infrastructure. Could you please specify what is meant by infrastructure? Yeah, that's another good word. That's like collaboration or empowerment, or yeah, exactly. But in the context of this RFA, we are going to define digital infrastructure as the whole spectrum of network, computing, and storage functions that a community or country needs in place for the successful delivery of applications and services in a mobile, internet protocol connected economy. In other words, we're looking at the entire digital ecosystem of a particular community. So you might be looking specifically at the network piece or a storage piece or a security piece, but bear in mind that if you're looking to do an internet-based solution in a girls' school someplace and there is no internet connectivity, that's going to be a problem. That is not taking the infrastructure into account. Okay, Andrea, back to you.
Okay. Many people asked if we have a list of target or priority countries that we'd like the projects to focus on, or if we had a preference for solutions that take place in one country as opposed to multiple countries over a region, and if we had any specific regions or countries that would receive preference. So we do not have a list of target or priority countries, and we don't have any preference for solutions that impact certain regions or countries over another. And similarly, we don't have a preference as to whether these solutions take place in one country or multiple countries. And so this really is up to you and what you feel is most appropriate for the solution that you're going to propose. Similar to this question about target or priority countries, we also received several questions about whether we had a target number of beneficiaries that we'd like the solutions to reach, whether we had a minimum or maximum number of beneficiaries, and if there's a preference for the type of beneficiaries. So similarly, we do not have a target number of beneficiaries, and we don't have any minimum or maximum amount that you need to attempt to reach. And we're going to talk a little bit, Revi will talk a little bit about specifically about monitoring and evaluation, but the idea is that each grantee, when awarded, will have kind of a unique plan for their number of beneficiaries that they will reach and their type of beneficiaries that they will reach as part of the project. So we don't have a preference on the subtype of beneficiaries. For example, a lot of people asked about certain geographies, if we wanted to work with refugees or similar disadvantaged populations. So we don't have a preference for this, but we do hope to see solutions that have the potential to affect the most numbers of people and address barriers to development issues most effectively. So I did actually see that we received 2 questions related to beneficiaries that were similar. 2 people had asked about whether they could propose something where we're working with men as well as women. So I might turn that over to Ravi. The questions are, let's see, do women need to be the primary users of a technology solution, or can the actual use be gender neutral as long as the benefits of technology benefit women? And there was a similar one, let me see. Would the challenge look favorably upon proposals that primarily benefit women, but also provide a benefit to men? So, for instance, a benefit to all students, both boys and girls, if you're doing an education project. So I'll see what Ravi thinks about that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge proponent that everyone with a gender, and that means all of us, is responsible for making gendered access to technology more equitable. If that means working with men and boys specifically to even address behavior change around access, that's absolutely feasible. So yes and yes. What we're mostly looking for is, of course, that specific lever or levers that are going to enable women and girls to benefit from ICT as much as men and boys. But if this is a solution where the rising tide lifts all boats and can demonstrate that, that's really a win.
Great. Thank you. And I also see there's another question related to beneficiaries. Is there a stipulated targeted age group for the women involved? Similar to what I just mentioned, we don't have a particular age group, geography, demographic. And so if you want to target young women or senior citizens, anything like that is fine. So great. Thank you. Okay. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the budget. We got a lot of questions from people asking what sorts of costs can be included in your budget, and can you include indirect costs? Is there a certain ratio that you should use for, let's say, activity costs versus personnel costs? Can you include subcontracts, subgrants, all of these things? So your budget in general, the general guidance is that your budget should include all of the costs that you anticipate incurring over the course of implementing your solution. So as part of this stage of the application, you'll see that there's the option to, or the requirement to download a budget template that must be completed as part of this stage of the RFA. This is a very high-level budget template. There are only 4 illustrative categories that we've included, which are labor, travel, materials, and other costs. You don't need to fill in all of these categories if they don't all apply to your solution. These are just estimated illustrative ideas. So it doesn't have to exactly be broken down that way. You should do whatever is most appropriate for you. Also, we cannot provide a ratio or percentage of cost per category because each of your organizations have a different budget, a different financial structure. And so this is really something that depends on you, and this is something that you would need to calculate. So the important part for us is that you have a rationale and a justification for how you've budgeted and how you've put together these costs. If you make it to the semi-finalist round, we will ask you for much more detailed information on your budget calculations, and you will need to be able to explain to us how you've come up with all of the different elements that make up your budget. So several people also asked if the budget might change if you are selected as a semi-finalist. There may be small adjustments or changes, but overall we expect that the total will not change by a large amount. We understand that if you are a semi-finalist and you go through the process of detailing out the budget for us, we understand that there might be adjustments, there might be slight increases or decreases, but overall it should not change very much. So just to go through a few examples of direct costs, because we got a lot of questions on what types of costs can be included. You can include personnel that are directly involved in the implementation of your project. You also can include costs for support personnel that may be part of your organization but not be directly involved in the implementation. For instance, if you have an office assistant who works on multiple different projects at the same time, you could include partial time for them, but maybe not all of their time. And again, we would ask you for justification or rationale for that calculation. You can include travel costs for your staff, for if there's need for beneficiaries to travel, if you need to travel from your country to the country of implementation, all of that would be allowable. You can include training costs, workshop costs for your beneficiaries, any kind of materials that the beneficiaries would need, any marketing, outreach, communications expenses that are part of your solution, any development of software, any digital products that are, again, that are part of your solution. You can also include the purchase of equipment or supplies as long as the equipment distribution is not the sole focus of your project. So if you, so we will not, as it's mentioned in the RFA, we will not be selecting projects that are solely for the distribution of equipment. So we would not select a grantee applicant that just wants to distribute cell phones to women. But if it's part of your of a larger solution or of a larger technical activity, then you can include that in your budget. You may also include subcontracts or sub-grants, but if you make it to the semi-finalist round, you will need to demonstrate through your past performance that you have the ability to manage subcontracts or sub-grants, meaning the administrative capacity or the financial capacity to manage them. And we'll also ask for supporting documents for any subcontractors or sub-grantees, such as budget narratives, indirect cost calculations. Grant funds cannot be used for construction or rehabilitation of buildings. We did receive several questions about construction. We cannot fund that, nor can they be used for any kind of short-term loans or anything of that nature. You may also include indirect costs in addition to all of the direct costs that I mentioned. There's no minimum or maximum percentage for indirect costs. Each organization has their own structure and would have their own percentage that they would bill or that they would include in their budget for us. So the important thing again is that if you would include indirect costs, you would need to substantiate or justify how you've calculated this. And that again would be asked during the semi-finalist phase if you make it to that stage. Great, okay, so the next question then, many people asked us what we meant by providing evidence of legal documentation to operate in your country of registration. And the application asks you to upload a copy of your registration documents. And so we were asked to clarify what documents we specifically need, and if we need to see registration documents for all organizations if we have a partnership. So as we mentioned before, we can only disperse grant funds to legally registered entities. So that can be many different types of organizations, a nonprofit, for-profit, non-governmental, community organizations. Public training institutions, yes, I see someone asked that. If we can partner with a public training institution, yes, that's fine. So as proof of legal registration, we would need whatever kind of legal documents are required in your country of operation. So each country is different, so it's hard for us to really say exactly what we want you to provide. But this could be business license, tax identification documents, certification of incorporation, some kind of government permits, nonprofit charter, something like that. And so again, it really depends on your country of registration, but any kind of document from your government that authorizes you to operate is what we're looking for. It needs to be something that's valid and that will be valid for the duration of your activity, so the approximately 18 months that we will be implementing. And also we received some questions about organizations that are currently in process of registering. You're still eligible to apply, but you must have your registration complete by the application due date, which is May 4th of 2018. So when you submit your application, you have to have your current registration documents attached at that time.
Great. Thank you. My turn again. So here's the question that we've gotten a lot of inquiry about, which is around monitoring and evaluation. And we've boiled this down to the following question. Can you clarify your expectations around evidence or monitoring and evaluation? what evidence is expected with our application, and what approach to evidence/M&E would be taken if we become finalists. Well, we hope to build evidence of the success of your solution with this funding. In this current stage, this is stage 1 of the application, there is an option to provide examples of evidence you may have regarding your solution. Examples of evidence could include testimonies or surveys, reports, articles, and data, among others. There is no requirement to provide a baseline study or any other type of framework analysis with your application. No specific types of evidence or M&E tools are required or preferred, and there are no specific targets nor expected number of beneficiaries that must be reached. For this current stage of the application, we do suggest including a proposed approach for how you will outline your metrics for success and your plan for measuring them. This should include how you will measure your impact and collection of evidence, analysis, and communication of your evidence gathering. Should you become a semifinalist and finalist, there will be some support given around building a strong framework for measuring impact, building evidence, and knowledge management. This will be done on an individual basis tailored for each solution. Specific metrics and indicators will be determined at that point.
Great. Okay, so that is the end of our list of most frequently asked questions, but I see that we've received some related questions that we can take some time to answer live for you that are related to some of the topics that we discussed. Before we go into that, though, we have our third and final poll, I think. Yes. So we want to know what types of support you need to develop your solution further. So we are interested in knowing what we can offer to help our semifinalists when you attend our semifinalist event that will be in June of this year. So we'd really like to know what types of different support that you're looking for. And again, you might recognize this question from our online application if you've made it through the application already. So, and also before we go into the Q&A, just in case anyone needs to drop off, I just want to remind you about the due date for the applications, which will be on May 4th, 2018 at 12 noon Eastern Time. And all of the application documents are can be found at our online, through our online application. So you can download a full copy of the request for applications, and there's also an online portal that you will use to answer a series of questions, as well as upload your concept note, which is the requirement for the first phase of the competition. Okay, great. So let me, great, I saw a couple questions about partnerships, so let me see if I can answer a few of them. Great. Okay, so Karen Greenblatt says, I represent a coalition of organizations and am planning to apply as a coalition with one of the members as a lead signatory. Will this be a barrier for one or more of the member organizations to apply independently as well? This is not necessarily a barrier, but it's not really recommended. We would really want the organizations, the partner organizations, to choose which application they want to be a part of. And so if they're going to be committing their resources and their time and their knowledge to one application, we would only want them to be on one. If they are a named partner. If they're contributing to multiple ones without being an actual named partner, that's a slightly different situation, and that would be allowed. But if you're actually naming them as a partner and they're signing a letter of commitment to participate with you, they should not participate with someone else as well.
Let's see, there's an academic one here. You mentioned that this isn't research focused. Would an academic partner then help or hurt? Well, as a former academic, I would say I love academic partners, but you know, we all know that there's a difference between you know, research that is meant to be like one person's PhD project that isn't necessarily going to have a focus on practical application, and the difference between maybe a research group at a university that's working on rural telecom communications, over a long-term, commitment with, a certain community. So it really just depends on what the shape of the research is and what the shape of the involvement is with an academic entity. I think some of the very best, thinking in this space is in the academic communities, but it's a matter of how it's applied, which needs to be practically and pragmatically.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see, another question about partnerships. Are private companies allowed to apply in partnership with a local NGO? Yes, this is totally fine. You would just need to select one or the other as your lead grantee. And a similar one right below that, regarding partnerships, is there a source or origin limitation? For example, can a US-based NGO partner with a Canadian company? We don't have any source or origin limitations because we're working with grant funds. This is fine, there's no limitation. So a US-based organization could work with a Canadian organization, that's totally fine. And Marisol asks, we work in Latin America, but are also constituted in the US. Should we include our 501c3 info, although the project would take place in Latin America? This, again, you would need to choose which branch of your organization would be the signatory. So if the signatory for the grant would be the US branch, then yes, you would include all of the legal documentation for the United States branch of your organization. If it would be one of your Latin American branches, then that's the information we would need. If in this case your lead, the grant signatory would be the US branch, then you would need to explain to us that the way that your organization is constituted, to explain that you have these local offices or local branches in Latin America, so that we know that you have a local presence in the country where you want to implement. Okay. Maybe for Revi, I saw there was a question about sorry, a lot of people are asking about partnerships. There was
one about health equipment, if that's an ICT.
No, this is the one.
Okay.
Preference to support projects that already want to use existing tech, or the creation of new technology for the solution. I believe we touched on that, but maybe we could explain a little bit more.
Sure. I think this is a fabulous question, because it really gets to the heart of how many different ways an organization or an expert or a company can look at the gendered digital divide. One way could be, to look at the specific barriers themselves that reduce women's and girls' access to technology. In that case, we would welcome interventions that are behavioral change based, are focused with men's and women's groups together, are a technical approach to this, such as wearable technology, something like that. If we look specifically at that angle. The other thing to look at is oops, I completely lost my train of thought. So we go back to the question. Oh, a new technology. If you create a new technology, I think that's also very compelling, because maybe there's a new technology that is very specific to women's and girls' needs in a certain community. And I can think of some very specific cases that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to influence anybody. But both of these approaches, all of these approaches are valid and equal, and it really just comes down to how does this make the difference in the long run? How do we make sure there is how to make sure we mitigate backlash in communities, because these things do come in and create change. How are you going to measure the impact of these technologies or solutions or interventions? So all of those three are welcome.
Great. And there was a related one that I think you spoke to, but Marisol also asks, if an existing project applies, you would expect a new location or an adaptation of the current project that is already running?
That would fit. I mean, we're not, we don't, for organizations that might be onto something and, need assistance in taking it to the next level, we would look at proposals that take a look at the fundamental value of the implementation, but also how it needs to change to become more effective, to scale to a different geography, et cetera. So we don't just want to take a project in its current state and add more funding to it. There needs to be work on the recipient side to show how the funds would be used to improve it or take it in a different direction.
Great. I found the health one you were talking about, sorry. Did you want to?
Sure, I'll take that one.
Okay.
Sure, someone's asking if ICT can be access to certain types of community health equipment. And I mean, I suppose that, I mean, the health equipment, there would need to be some sort of technology component in this project. So it couldn't just be, yeah, I thought the question was a little different when I first read it, so my apologies for that. But you know, if the health equipment might be itself digital, and it might be a way, there might be a way to digitize women and girls' access to that technology. It might be a way of, yeah, health is definitely one of the sectors that we know there's a lot of ICT work in, and also a very important one for women and girls. So I'm sure that whatever you're thinking is probably applicable.
Great. Okay. So I see several. We're receiving a lot of questions. Thanks. So we're trying to look at them as they come in. But I see a couple where people asked about how many applications an organization can submit. We don't have a limit on the number of applications per organization, but we also would want you to keep in mind that we would. If you were selected for more than one grant, you would need to be able to demonstrate that you can implement more than one at the same time. So we want to see that you would have, you know, maybe different staff on each activity, or enough staff that you could cover each activity, enough financial and administrative resources to manage more than one at the same time. Great. Okay, let's see what else we can talk about here. Great. Okay. Yes, this is a really good question. Are for-profit companies allowed to apply, or are only nonprofit organizations allowed? So for-profit companies are welcome to apply. This is totally fine, but you please note that all USAID grant funds are subject to the same restriction, that they cannot be used as profit. And so if you are a for-profit company, you would not be able to include any kind of earnings or any profit in your budget. And so you would need to enter the application process knowing that you would not receive any profit from the grant funds. You would only be able to cover your costs. Great. Thank you. Okay. How many submissions are you expecting? That's a good question. I don't know. We expect to get a lot. Yes. Approximately at this stage, if we were guessing. Yeah, that's a good question. We're expecting a lot. Yeah, right. And you know, we've had great response so far. We've had a lot of a lot of questions, a lot of people that have that are on our email list, a lot of people that have signed up to receive more information. We have a lot of participants on this webinar right now, and so we really are excited about it, and we're expecting to receive quite a few applications. So we think we'll have some good competition. Great. Okay, let's see what else we can talk about. Oh, this is a good question here. I'm sorry if I think I might not have mentioned this, but someone asks, are legal documents required from an organization that you're intending to partner with, or just the legal documents as the applicant? So if I did not make this clear, I'm sorry, so thank you for asking, but we would only require the legal documents from the lead grantee or the lead applicant. So only the organization that will be signing the grant would need to provide their registration documents, would need to be registered in the government databases, and would need to demonstrate their financial capability. And so only one organization. If you have partners, it's not required for them. Great. Let's see. I think we might have spoken to this one, Revi, but if would expanded geography within the current country count as new, or would a new geography need to be a new country? I think we did speak to that.
Expand geography is open to interpretation. So it can be within a country, within a region. Maybe you're working with a different ethnic group or social linguistic group. Maybe you're just moving to a different part of the country, or you're moving to another country. That is up to you.
Thank you. And how about this one? Anonymous attendee asked, does the benefit of the program mandatorily have to be economic, meaning income, or could it be health or awareness level benefits for the women and girls by use of ICT?
The benefit itself should actually be the increased access and use of to ICT. So yes, it can be within a livelihoods project. It can be in a health or education setting, or it can simply be community-wide, i.e. this group of marginalized folks has not been able to access technology or information for a certain reason, and we as the organization are going to approach that certain reason. So no, it does not have to actually look at economic impact. It really just needs to look at barriers to women's and girls' access and use of ICT. Again, going back to the root of the RFA, which is looking at the social and cultural barriers to ICT access and use.
Great. Okay.
Can we go back up?
Yes.
There's a few that I've gotten that are like, let's something about multiple.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. As Revi's looking, I did see that
multiple different funds.
Sure.
We've had a few of those that are already ICs that are already recipients of other grants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can we apply for the grant with a project that has multiple different funds? You would not be able to apply if your specific activity is also receiving U.S. government funds, because the U.S. government will not duplicate what they're paying for. So if you're receiving a grant for this exact project from another USAID project, let's say, then you could not receive funding from us.
Yeah, we've got some questions about that, about the DREAMS proposals and other grant changes.
Right. So if you're receiving, I mean, many of you probably have funding from different organizations that fund your organization as a whole, which is understandable. But if you have a grant for this exact solution, let's say, from the Department of State or USAID, then it would not apply in this case. So, okay. I do see that several people asked again about the amount for the grants, and this is the first thing that we talked about. So if you joined late, you might not have had a chance to see it, but we have $1 million total available for the WomenConnect grants at this time, and we're anticipating about 10 finalists. So we think that each grant will be approximately $80,000 to $120,000. So again, as we mentioned, there's no specific minimum or maximum that you should apply for. You should apply for what you think it will cost you to implement your solution, but what we estimate, please keep in mind that the estimate then is $80,000 to $120,000.
We've gotten that one a few times.
I actually don't know the answer.
Okay. All right.
So we're not going to answer it. Yeah, so there are some that
There's some we have to research. Some of you are trying to stump us with questions.
Exactly. There are some that we might need to answer afterwards. Yeah, so I think we want to try to wrap up here. So maybe we'll answer one or two more, and then great. Oh, here's a good question. Digital entrepreneurship. What is the definition of this, and can it be a viable grant option?
Well, I think that entrepreneurship is, it's certainly one of those buzzwords these days, but it's also a very important concept. I mean, there's a lot of promise around the digital development and ICT for development, that this is going to help people engage in entrepreneurial activities. So absolutely, the proposals can have a digital entrepreneurship component to them. I think that would be very interesting. people that have worked in this space for a long time have seen projects, fail and succeed when it comes to entrepreneurship, because there's so much to look at. There's markets, there's logistics, there's all those things. But at the end of the day, women's and girls' access to entrepreneurial opportunities is something that I think we're in all sectors we're striving for.
Great. Okay. And I also see several questions about country eligibility, and this will be explained more thoroughly when we post the answers to the questions online. So, so just in general, we would say that anywhere that USAID has a mission office is an eligible country. But there are some nuances to this that we will also explain when we post the answers online. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up. We're just almost at exactly an hour. And so any questions that we have not been able to answer, we will make sure are answered when we post the full question and answer document online. And you can find that in the download section of our website where you found the full RFA.
Thanks for taking all this time with us and for asking such great questions, especially the ones that we're stumped on.
Oh, yes, and again, just to remind you that the applications are due on May 4th, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you very much for all your participation. Great.
And one more thing, we won't be taking any more questions because the Q&A section has closed, and I see questions still incoming. But this was our webinar about these questions. So
thank you.
Look at the recording and read the transcript. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks very much. Okay.